We're back with more Road Gang Radio, streaming live on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and RoadGangRadio.com. Jimmy Max back in the driver's seat.
Hey guys, normally I read people's entire bios and give you a sense of who they are, but so much of John Fry during our session on the Recruiter Roundtable and our next guest, their biographies are actually in so many ways the information you need. Tina Durborow, of course, joins us again. We're thrilled to have her back. She is the Director of Transportation over at Cecil College. The journey there is literally a study in lifelong learning, one of her great passions, and we consider her a friend over here. It's a great story. We can't wait for her to tell it. Good morning to you, Tina. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
I won't lie to you. You know, we've talked about your story before, but it's so applicable now because we live in this strange economy. I don't want to call it a bad economy or a good economy. It's just in a perpetual state of flux. One day to the next, we don't know where it's going. And one of the ways that we can control our own situation as opposed to the rest of the world around us is by controlling our ability to intake information and never stop learning. And so rather than kind of go through your bio that gets you to the Director of Transportation position, I wanted you to kind of unpack that too, because I want you to tell, again, your CDL story, because you had been doing education, which was where you really have a mastery of, and then to shift into transportation the way you did, you put your money where your mouth was. I mean, you literally did the exact thing that you expected other people to do. You decided to learn something new, and in doing so, put yourself in a position where you ended up becoming the Director of Transportation. Can you talk a little bit about your own background and then tell people how it is somebody with a master's degree in organizational leadership ends up running a transportation program? It's a great story, by the way. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Sure. My bachelor's is in physical education and health education. So I was a health and PE teacher in an elementary school, and then the opportunity came about to become the Director of Lifelong Learning here at the college, and I ran the summer camp programs, the youth programs that you would do for fun, the adult programs that you would do for fun. So like if you wanted to travel to France and wanted to learn a little bit of the language and just wanted to take a fun French class, you would come to us and take that class. And I came onto the program about 2004, and in 2014, I was given the opportunity to transition to the Director of Transportation Training, and I'm always up for a new challenge, and I thought that's an amazing new step for me. I grew up on a farm, so big trucks and tractors and big equipment was something that I've always kind of dealt with. But when they asked me to become the director, I wanted to get a CDLA. I felt like if I was going to talk to students about the things that they're going to experience, I should experience those things myself. So I went through the class just like a student would do. And then after I was done the class, I worked part-time for different organizations so that I could have some real experience. You know, I'm still the director. I still have a full-time job, so I couldn't go over the road. But I did work for some local companies doing some hub things. And then I worked for the state plowing snow. And so that when the students come in and talk to me, I have real world experience that I can talk to them about. And it helped me understand when they come back and they're like, wow, that class was harder than I thought, or that was more than I thought. I understand it because there were pieces of it, even though I grew up driving big things, that were hard for me too.
I'm going to say something, and this is meant as a complete and total compliment. You are a master of picking stuff up for the purpose of helping other people pick stuff up. And what I mean by that, if you follow me, and you talk about the idea of, you know, people want to pick up a little bit of French so they can go over and have a nice vacation over in France and not feel like the Parisians are completely looking at them like they're from the planet Mars. In the same way, what you kind of master in is the idea of helping people figure out if, in fact, they're interested in something and then give them choices on how to further their education. All of that requires really kind of rigorous self-analysis. And so what I wanted to ask you in regards to drivers is, you know this as well as anybody because you've worked on both the public service side with the state of Pennsylvania for winter maintenance. You talked about working over in a hub as well, too. Trucking is not one industry. It's not, it is not one job driving
Right.
from point A to point B. How do you go about the business of helping students, and you can talk about your own experience, figure out what kind of driving they want to do? And I know, given what you do, you understand that question because you serve a community and there are
Right.
all kinds of driving jobs. Am I making sense, Tina?
Absolutely. So I go into the very first day of each class, whether it starts in the morning or whether it starts in the evening. The very first day I go in and have a, hey, here's our expectations kind of conversation with the students so that everybody's on board with what we're expecting from class and students. But one of the things I talk to them about is all of our instructors have 10, 20 years experience driving, and they all had very different careers. And I encourage the students to talk to the instructors and ask them about their career path, because each trucking company has its own work schedule, its own culture, its own whatever. And you may start out this class thinking, hey, I want to do flatbed. And then you talk to the guys and go, wow, car hauling might be amazing for me, because you have to pick the trucking company that fits your personality and what you need. If you have aging parents and little kids and you can't be gone for 5 or 6 weeks, you don't want to sign on with an over-the-road company. They'll hire you, but you're not going to stay in the industry because it doesn't fit your needs. And every company is so different in what their culture is and what their expectations are. You could have a very different career every single time you change companies. And I encourage the students after they're done class, if they haven't found the company that they want, to email me or call me and say, hey, I'm looking for local, but I could do over the nights a couple of times, and give me kind of a parameter of what they're looking for. And then I have a list of companies that have reached out to the college and said, hey, we're looking for students that we would hire. And I then send them 5 or 6 companies to try. They can hire, apply to any of the companies, but if it's not going to fit what they're looking for, they're not going to stay in trucking. And ultimately, we want them to stay in trucking for a long time and be happy.
This is a process question, and you can get deep into the weeds on this because a lot of people, often don't really do this kind of work because they don't think it's work, and they say, well, I'm wasting time, I should be doing something else. I don't think it's a waste of time at all, in the sense that you're able to kind of let those people know what their options are because you understand your private partners incredibly well, meaning that you
Right.
know what each one of those companies wants. And I'm actually asking you for studying tips and research tips for our listeners. What is the best way and the most efficient way? Because you can't just do a deep dive into every company. What is the best way to figure out if a company is right for you before you even apply to that company, other than getting great suggestions from folks like you? But you have to do that work. Somebody's got to do that work. And what does that work look like? Am I making sense on the question? You can ask for clarification.
No, absolutely.
All right.
And I think it starts with, you have to look at yourself, and not only do you have to think about, okay, what schedule fits my needs, like what type of things are important to me that I need to bring to the table for that company. So if you can't work weekends for whatever reason, and the company has on their website, or has in whatever research you've done for looking at Googling it or whatever, and that company routinely has people out, their day starts on Saturday morning and ends on Wednesday for whatever reason, you got to look at it from both sides. So a deep dive into what can I give to the company so that I'm a valuable person to them, and fit what they need from me so that they're happy with me. And it's got to be kind of symbiotic. You only stay with a company when both of you are happy, because if they're not happy with you and you have to miss all the time because of whatever, you're not going to stay at that company. And the idea would be that you want to find one that matches what you need and what they need at the same time. But I think you just got to look at what the route says. If it's a dedicated route and it says you're going to Ohio twice a week, do the math on it. You're not going to be home every night. You're going to be out at least a little bit. So I think you gotta look at it from kind of both directions.
Yeah, okay, so we're kind of building a little bit of a model here, and the idea is the self-analysis begins with kind of figuring out what your actual schedule is, not what you think you can do, but what you know you can do. The other thing is too, and boy, the way this is where your extensive what I have the same kind of background you do in regards to I've done a lot of stuff, and I'm amazed at how it all ends up applying. Knowing your physical limits, knowing what kind of physical shape you are in is often going to be a determinant of whether you can do that particular trucking job because some jobs behind the wheel require
Yeah.
much more strenuous activity than others, correct?
Correct. And it's funny because what I say to students is, you know, for example, if you would like to go work for a bottling company and you're going to be moving soda bottles around, they weigh a lot more than potato chips, for example. You could have the same type of distributor route, but you're going to have very different physical needs. And the bonus to hauling soda bottles around is you don't have to have a gym membership. The downside to maybe hauling soda bottles around is you're going to be very physically active during the day, and that may not be for everybody. And so you have to look at the things that you're hauling as well, and your physical abilities as well. So it's not just schedule. It is very much tied to that physical ability. If you are interested in flatbed hauling and you have a shoulder problem that you can't throw stuff up over your head, that may not be the best choice for you. You may need to pick a different type of company.
I'm going to make you laugh, actually. My brother owned a weatherization and insulation company, and I said, is there anything else I need to know before we start doing this together? He says, yeah, you might want to cancel your gym membership. He said, I don't think you're getting over there enough. He said, you might just want to drop money occasionally if you want to get some stretches in. He says, second of all, after you haul a couple of bales of cellulose, he said, you'll be just fine in regards to your shoulder and bicep work.
Exactly.
He was absolutely right. And it really is important, too. And the other thing is that, let's go with the intellectual side of this as well too, because I was once told on a segment that we were doing that somebody said to me that the greatest skill moving into the 21st century is really old school. Somebody told me that if you can finish a book from pillar to post, read an entire book and actually process the overall arc of it, you have an advantage over most of the people in the workforce. Because one of the other things is now part of things when people go through your program, you've done a lot of vetting of these partners, so you know these are reputable companies they're going to work for.
Right.
But one of the things too is that there will be times when the people who you train go off to other states and other places and want to kind of get going. How do you help people from a soft skill perspective figure out whether or not these companies are reputable and do it in a way that is efficient and doesn't require around the clock reading? Once again, am I making sense?
No, absolutely. So we spend a lot of time in class talking about the different types of companies. And, I think certain companies have a reputation for certain things. And one of the things that we talk to them about is, the company is going to be worried about, are you showing up where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there without tearing up my truck? So you're also representing the company. You're going to have to be able to speak to their intake people. You're going to have to speak to their dock people. You're representing their company. So there's soft skill things that we talk about in class, and that we start practicing in class so that they are good stewards to the company. But then, as you get experience, you should be able to, by the language the recruiter or the onboarding person is talking to you, figure out kind of what their culture is going to look like. If they're a company that is hiring brand new people and putting them on the road, like brand new just came out of school and putting them on the road and don't have a training program where they're taking you from a green, brand new, CDL holder and have a training program that is 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever long, where they're making you more seasoned, that's not a company you probably want to be part of, because they're not investing in you to make you a safer, better driver and giving you all of the tools that you need to be successful. We do a train the trainer program here, and the companies that have invested in creating very good trainers for their programs are the companies that have a better retention rate, in my opinion.
I love the use of the words. One of my favorite words, by the way, when used properly, and this was proper use of it, I want to point out stewards. I love that word. The idea that you are a steward of the company. And one of the things, if you guys were listening carefully, that Tina pointed out too, is that you're not only being interviewed, you are interviewing. And it's one of the hardest things to communicate to people who want a job, that the boss or the potential boss or employer, yes, they're interviewing you to figure out if you're part of their culture, but it's also important for you to remember that you're interviewing them as well too. That's part of the soft skill, and that's a crucial thing that you and I have talked about this. The idea that you need to look out for yourself, or you won't be a good steward for the company. But the flip side of that is you want to make sure that the company is a good steward for you. You want to make sure that they represent your values, because we've talked about this with Bennett Trucking, is that Bennett Trucking has people that come to them that are just terrific, but they really don't fit what the company's looking for. That happens too, where there are completely reputable, decent, honorable companies who just aren't what you're looking for in regards to culture or in regards to what they have to offer you. And that's okay sometimes, correct?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I wanted to talk about the Train the Trainer program, because that's what's so important to me, and it's a unique set of skills you have because you are an education specialist. You're a person who actually gets people up to speed for that. And in regards to Train the Trainer, what would you say is the most crucial aspect? What is the inherent talent? There's things that can be taught, there's skills that can be given, but what is an inherent talent that makes people gravitate? I have a producer over here, in Andre, who, in regards to skills can be taught. What can't be taught is the fact that he's one of the most decent human beings I've ever met in my life, really generous and warm, which makes him an incredible steward. I can't teach him that. That's something I can't make him better at. What in regards to teaching is that inherent quality?
I think it's learning the communication and learning to read people. So the reason we started the Train the Trainer program was twofold. We have previous students, alumni, who come back and visit the class and just, hey, haven't seen you guys in a while. And we run into students all the time out in the wild, and always ask them how you're doing. And the ones that say, I'm no longer driving, we always ask them, what happened? And a lot of the times, maybe not a majority, but a lot of the times it was, well, I got a trainer that yelled at me the whole time, or I got a trainer that slept in the back, or I got a trainer that wouldn't let me back the truck up, so I got frustrated. And then on the other side of that, we had companies calling us and saying, hey, we've got people we'd like to be trainers, but they're not sure how to do it. So the truck driver by nature is a solitary person, who is very good at what they do, but may not necessarily be good at communicating how they do it. So I look at like the sports guy. If you're excellent at soccer and it came easy to you, you will have more trouble describing how you learned that thing than the person who struggled at soccer and worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. So the truck drivers worked at it, or this came easy to them, and that's why they stayed in their careers, but they don't necessarily know how to communicate that information or how to say, okay, this person's a different generation than I am. Maybe me yelling at them isn't going to get to them. Maybe I need to approach it a different way, or maybe they need to be yelled at because they're being lazy. But learning how to read that and know which tool to use, just because you have a hammer doesn't mean that the hammer is always the right thing to do. What tool is the best tool to use to get through to that person, and how do we, teach them the skills that they need so that I can turn them loose eventually, and they're going to be as safe as I have.
I have to ask this question. It's going to seem out of left field, but it actually relates to what you just said. I was kind of curious, are you a baseball fan or a football fan or a basketball fan?
Football.
Okay, so you're a football fan. So we all know that Lou Holtz was about as lousy a wide receiver as you could possibly imagine. Tommy Lasorda never made it to the big leagues, and there is a list of baseball managers and football coaches who, and I'll give you another great example. Tony Romo can watch a football game and break it down like there's no tomorrow. He was a very late draft pick. He had to study his ass off in order to become a starting quarterback, and because of that, his understanding of the game is off the chart because he had to use his brain to make it work. And that's kind of what you're suggesting here. Is that
very real.
If you're intuitively talented, you're like it's kind of like when people say, how can you not hit pitch? And I tell people all the time, no, you were born with an inherent knowledge of what pitch is,
Right.
which means it's harder to teach what pitch is if you know it instinctively. Is that kind of what you're getting at here?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. The things that come easy to you, you don't have to learn inside out and backwards. The things that come hard to you are the things that you're learning inside out and backwards. And then you have 16 different ways to explain it to somebody else because you had to do that 16 things, I saw it with kids when I was teaching PE. I've seen, you look at that star athlete makes the worst coach. The athlete who had to work the hardest makes the best coach.
Yeah, and
Most of the time.
well, absolutely. There are the exceptions actually prove the rule. The exceptions are like I think about like I'll give a baseball example. Don Mattingly, who was an extraordinary baseball player, but what's neat is towards the end of his career he began to get injured a lot and had to figure out ways to compensate for his injuries. I think that's what
Right.
made him a good manager in the end was that he was forced to do self-analysis beyond the pure talent, and that makes a big difference
Absolutely.
too. That's a big thing as well. Often when you have people who are raw talent and don't have what I call the internal discipline who have to develop it to hone their talent, but all of those things actually prove the rule you're talking about rather than kind of defy it. And it's a really neat thing. How do you, have you ever been in a classroom with somebody, and it's so early in the process, and be like, when this gal gets up to speed, she's not only going to be a good driver, she's going to be a great trainer. Have you seen that before in a classroom?
No, absolutely. And like I said, I go in the first day, and one of the things I say to the students is, do not compare your progress to anybody else's progress. You all are coming in with different skills, different abilities, different talents, different experiences. And the thing that is hard for you is going to be easy for somebody else. But they're not going to be out on the road with you. You're going to be out on the road by yourself or with a different person. But you got to compare your progress to your own progress. But we see it all the time with students who they are putting in the effort and they're struggling, but they are working harder and harder and harder than everybody else. That student is going to be just fine. The student who is kind of lazy about it, but still doing okay, they're the ones we worry about.
Oh, it's the hardest thing. By the way, I call it last night study syndrome. There are people who literally are so smart that they can pick up stuff in the blink of an eye. The problem is when they run into something that they can't pick up in the blink of an eye, they get deeply frustrated. You know what I'm talking about? That idea of when it comes really easy, those moments when you hit the wall, you can watch them. The deep sighs begin, the frustration begins, they get angry at everybody around them, and it's kind of a remarkable thing. And that's the moment of adjustment. I want to ask, as an educator, are you able to take people aside and say, look, this has all come very easy. This is the first wall you hit. This is the first time you had to deal with adversity. Do you have strategies to get people through that and make them into the good drivers that they want to become?
We do. And so one of the things that we work with our instructors, because we do a train-the-trainer program with our instructors too, is recognizing those signs, that frustration, and being able to pull that student aside and say, hey, kind of what's going on? So as an instructor, you're the drill sergeant, you're the cheerleader, you're the therapist, you're the parent patting them on the back going, hey, you're doing really good. So you kind of got to read the person to know what the right thing is to do. But we have multiple conversations with that student. Hey, look, I can see you're getting frustrated, but keep in mind, look where you started 3 weeks ago. Look at all the progress that you've made. I just watched you, offset parallel park, and you did amazing. You couldn't do that 2 weeks ago. So take a deep breath, give yourself credit for what you've accomplished, and take a break for a second, and let's come back at it later. Being teachable and being able to take that breath and de-escalate your own emotions is probably the biggest key to being successful in the class.
I will tell you, it is that is teachable, by the way. So as frustrating and sometimes as obstinate as things can sometimes seem, the ability for self-analysis, which I didn't think at first was teachable, I have come 180 degrees on that, by the way. I have come to believe absolutely you can teach people how to take that breath. This was so cool, Tina, yesterday. So we had Dr. Ben Kligler on, and he and I were just talking about Steph Curry, the basketball player, and a lot of other people's work on breathing. And it's extraordinary that simply taking a breath and bringing more oxygen into your bloodstream actually allows you to have this moment where you can actually do analysis of what's going on. And that's a teachable thing. At the end of the day, teaching people to breathe better is an extraordinary thing that you kind of make happen. Let me ask you what you got coming up now in regards to, are you still innovating and thinking about new ways of teaching? Do you have new programs you're looking at, or are you refining what you've got going on?
We continuously refine the Train the Trainer program, but we're always looking at new ways to bring skills to students. We're a member of, and I know you're familiar with the NAPFTDS, the Publicly Funded Truck Driver Training School Association. So we're hosting the Region 7 conference in September, and the focus of this conference is going to be on leveling up our instructors. Like, what are the other tools we can give our instructors? Each college that's part of this program, this organization has amazing instructors and has amazing programs. What are the things that this college does that's excellent with their instructors, and what are the things that we do that are excellent with our instructors, and kind of bringing that to the table so that we're stepping up that level and making it more of a, for lack of it, like just written down. What are the good things that you do? Those best practices that you do, we all kind of do them, but there's things that I can learn from each college and things that they can learn from us because we're all kind of working towards the same goal of putting very safe drivers out there.
And by the way, just to kind of let you know, this goes back to the old football analogy. I don't know how many coaches actually offer coaching seminars to their fellow coaches, by the way, because best practices mean that you are actually the best among the best as opposed to winning in a sea of mediocrity. It makes such a difference. Our friends at the National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driving Schools, by the way, Tina, of course, over at Cecil College, that is of one of their members. Go to Cecil, CECIL.edu/CDL. And you'll find out all about them. They're also on Cecil College Drives over on the Book of Face. Tina, I am so glad you could make it back. We're going to try to get up there in September, by the way. Would love to see everybody. I actually got a chance to go to the one in Galveston. Really have a good time with you guys. Go have the best of days. It's great talking to you again.
You too.
All righty, dear. Oh, absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, Dre. Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you so much, everybody. The numbers are way up, by the way. Keep hitting that like button on the tube of you, man. Something is going on. I don't know what it is, but people are beginning to figure out that Road Gang Radio is where the action is.